Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. Today, I'm chatting with Laura Lipton, author of Mentoring Matters, Data-Driven Dialogue, How to Talk So Teachers Listen, and so many more. I can't list them all here. In today's Spotlight, we're focusing in on the continuum of practice for coaches to help unpack the different roles and stances that coaches may need to take and why. In the full-length episode, we also chat about using data to measure our impact as coaches, the art of coaching, and working with school leaders to help them understand the value of coaching. Laura is an established expert in all of these areas, and getting to hear her share so many foundational elements of successful coaching is so powerful. I know you are going to love this episode. To hear the full conversation, subscribe to Coach Better wherever you get your podcasts. Today's conversation is going to give you tons of insight into the Coach Certificate Mentorship Program because there's so many aspects of Laura's work that we use within the program, including the continuum of practice. Wherever you are in building a coaching culture in your school, the coach will give you the strategy, skills, and tools you need to make coaching a success. This academic year-long online course and mentorship program will empower you to confidently apply instructional coaching strategies in any situation, from building a coaching program to having coaching conversations to being a leader in your school community. Registration for our next global cohort opens on the 21st of February and closes on the 14th of March. Find out more and join the waiting list at edurolearning.com/coach. Welcome back to the Coach Better podcast. Today, I am super excited to be here with Laura Lipton, and I remember attending one of Laura's sessions at the EarCoast conference, maybe like 10 years ago, maybe even longer than that now, and you just blew my mind with what you were talking about in terms of coaching and assessment and articulating coaching and the value of that work with educators. Since then, I have read tons of your books. One of my favorite is Mentoring Matters, and that's one that we use all the time in the Coach Certificate program that I run. And there's a couple of resources in there that really kind of also blow people's minds. And so we're going to talk about a bunch of those today. But before we dig any deeper into that, can you tell us a little bit about how your work has evolved over time? Because I know you're the author of, I think, 7 books. You've got a lot of work under your belt. I want to make sure we have an idea of that evolution of your journey as an educator and a leader in this field.
Sure. Happy to. And thank you for having me. I'm honored to be with you. I would say I started in the classroom and teaching, and always my teaching was integrated and thinking centered. You know, I think that that's really the core of how you engage kids, what you really can give. The gift of education is the gift of how to be self-reliant, how to be a problem solver, how to access information, how to be a good thinker. And so I taught multiple grade levels, but always with that at the heart. And then when I went into administration, that was the transfer to the notion of adults that I worked with and why it would matter for them. So the interactions I had with them were always focused on their thinking, enhancing that, and then how they might do that with the kids with whom they're working, so that the influence was one step away and yet broader to a large degree because I was reaching more educators. And then, boom, I was introduced to cognitive coaching, which it just resonated. It sang to my heart, you know, that you're not talking about being corrective. You're not talking about changing behavior. You're talking about influencing expertise by the way people think, and that it is a developmental process. So the work kind of evolved in that way. The nice thing was I always found a way to gravitate to roles and to jobs and to positions that were congruent with my values and my beliefs. I think that was good fortune and maybe strategy. I don't know. And so eventually, though, I decided to leave organizational life and school life and go out on my own and begin a small business. So a small publishing firm and human resource development firm, and did professional development, so on. And the rest is history.
And you just keep going, which is the awesome part, right? Like you're never done with this work, and you have lots of ways. When you're talking about as an administrator influencing on a broader scale, I think your business now has the capacity to influence on an even broader scale. I think that's really exciting.
True. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite resources within the book Mentoring Matters, and this is the one I'm like excited to I have a bunch of questions that I'm excited to talk to you about, but this one I really want to talk to you about, because in a lot of the work that I'm doing with coaches, either they are new to coaching, or maybe they have seen their role more as a consultant without being able to label such a thing, right? Like that's just kind of the way they've perceived their role. They have been someone in the classroom who has done a certain aspect of learning really well. They get into a coaching position, and then it's kind of like they're the consultant for that subject area, whether it's literacy, math, science, whatever it might be. And having this like mind shift from consultant to collaborator to coach has been a real aha moment for like literally everyone that I work with. And I'm curious, how do you help coaches and teachers recognize the needs of their coachee, and how to switch and move and choose between the right role for that moment so they don't get stuck in one area?
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you asked that question. I have lots to say about it. Let me organize it a little bit. So part of what you're talking about, I think, just to label it, is the work we do that we call the Continuum. And that is, the Continuum is based on the balance of information with the processing of that information. So who is providing more of the information at any given time is what defines the stance, we call them. And so in a consultative stance, it would be the expert, the literacy, curricular expert or whatever, the math coach, who is offering more information in the moment. But the issue in part is that you can fall into the trap of expertise. They say that what do you think is kind of the cheese in the mousetrap? It's very tempting, or what should I do is kind of an invitation to tell. And so to be wary of that. So the notion is that in any stance, a coach, a mentor, any kind of a leader, supervisor is a growth agent. And the growth agent has one goal, and that is to increase capacity and decrease dependency. So if you embrace that role, if you embrace that goal, then giving advice falls in the face of that, because it's very satisfying. I know a lot about literacy, and a second grade teacher is just really new teacher, really not sure what to do. I know what I really think they should do. And so they ask me and I tell them, and it's great. We both leave smiling, very satisfying in the moment, but if I didn't do anything to increase capacity. So listeners, please don't hear that I'm suggesting you just leave somebody high and dry by asking them a question that they can't answer. But it's the balance. So you offer some information and the critical learning pieces, and then you inquire about that information. So I might say, here's a couple of things that would probably be very effective given your goal here with your second graders. As you think about that and your class, how does that fit for you? Or as you think about that, what resources might you want to summon in order to implement that? So it is kind of a bite and a chew, a bite of information that I offer, and then have time to chew on it with a good question that makes me, as the learner, own that information. It makes me think about, how does it fit in my context? How would I apply it? How would I implement it?
Yes, I was nodding along. I know you could see me nodding along as you were talking, because all those things are things that we talk about all the time. And I really like the trap of expertise phrasing, and that idea of a coach as a growth agent. And I think one of the struggles we get into, just like you were saying, is in the moment. how do you catch yourself? And I think if you can keep asking yourself, am I increasing capacity by the response that I'm giving, then you can maybe give yourself that pause before you say a solution or whatever might be like more comfortable coming to your mind.
Exactly. And I think what you're naming is what Charles Duhigg calls the habit cycle. So our responses are habituated. So somebody comes to me with a problem, and that's my cue. So the habit cycle is a cue, a routine that kicks in based on that cue, a reward that reinforces the routine, and it keeps going. And so if I want to, so somebody comes to me with a problem and my routine is I'm going to solve it. And the reward is we both leave smiling. So it keeps going. So if I change that up a little bit and I increase to break the habit cycle between the cue and the routine, you need to create awareness. So the first piece is to say, oh, there might be other more effective ways than solving in this moment. So the awareness. And then building a pattern break. So instead of solving, I might paraphrase and ask the question. I've broken my pattern. And then the new reward is a deposit in the capacity bank. So I realize now that I have helped this person not just leave with a potential solution, but have more capacity to solve a similar problem or their own problem at a future point. So so the new reward then, again, as I said, is that deposit in the capacity bank, and it begins to break.
Yes, all of that, so much. And I love the feeling of when you're able to do that, because obviously it's something I'm always getting better at as well. When you're able to do that and you see the click in the other person's mind that, oh, I can solve my own problem.
Yeah.
It actually is almost more rewarding. I know it's sometimes almost tempting to build dependency because you feel needed and you feel valued. Right. And I don't think people are doing that consciously, but I know how that feeling is a good feeling. So if we could capture the other feeling as being an even better feeling, because they're still going to come back and work with you because they still got value out of that conversation. You just empowered them to level up to the next conversation instead of coming back at you with the same level of question.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better.
Yes. I feel like it's such a mind shift and it's really interesting. I mean, I'm not working with hundreds of people. Maybe over time I've worked with hundreds of people, but everyone goes through this same process. And I think it just takes a little bit to figure it out. And yeah, it's really interesting how you can articulate that so clearly.
Yeah. Now, let me say, though, that I want to go back to your original question about how attractive the consultative stance is, and how it isn't even that the individual sees themselves as needing to be there. Their colleagues, relationships are reciprocal. And so I want you to fix me. I don't want, I want you to tell me what to do. And if I ask you to tell me what I should do, and it doesn't work, I don't have to take any responsibility. I can blame you. It's like, oh yeah, that idea didn't really work. So in order to create commitment and ownership, it's a dance. It's a fluid navigation. But I don't want to discount the value of the information the expert has, because it's a resource. I think there's a misconception that when I stay too long in consulting, it's regressive. Or if I can't stay in a coaching stance and only have an inquiry-driven conversation, somehow I failed or my colleague has failed or they can't think enough or whatever. So to think about the consulting stance as a resource and offer chunks of information with the opportunity to process it, because that's what causes transfer and that's what causes ownership. Yes.
And I do think it is. So side topic, I don't know if we'll dig into it or not, but one of the issues that comes up, lots of schools in the Asia region are trying to build kind of coaching into the school culture so that everyone can be a peer coach, the way it's envisioned. Sometimes the execution of that becomes coaches in particular struggling to identify when it's better to be a consultant versus when is time to be a coach? Like the visual that always comes into my mind is the kids are coming down the hallway to the classroom. The teacher grabs the coach in the hallway, asks a question. The coach's like, well, what do you think about that? And that might not be the question they'd ask,
Right.
but in that moment in time, that is not what should be happening right now. But when that happens a lot, it gets a kind of a bad reputation of coaching is the problem. They never answer my question. And so the way that you describe it as a dance, and that there is a value to that information, and we just have to know our coachees well enough and know the moment well enough to be able to choose how and when you provide that information. And I love the chunks with the opportunity to process. That like phrasing fits very nicely in my brain. And the way that you ask that question, that structure is beautiful as well. So helping coaches understand in the moment how to proceed based on the needs of the person they're working with, because there is value in there's value in collaboration too. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Anytime at any juncture of interaction, there's always an array of options. So part of it is to stop and think, first of all, to not jump with your habit. So the first thing is to say, not necessarily say it in this way, but you are considering what are my options here and what might best suit the moment. And then, so I'm operating in the moment, and I'm also operating over time. And so part of it is, what we often say is somebody comes to you bleeding, you're going to give them a Band-Aid. You're not going to say, and how might you avoid that in future? It's like, so you will do that. However, if someone's continually doing it and it's a pattern consistently, you've created dependency. And then you potentially want to step back and say, how do I break the pattern? What are some other ways to do this? Maybe I need to not only interact with this person in the moment in the hallway, but at a different point, let's sit down and think about how is a particular moment an illustration of a bigger generalization or a bigger issue that would be a nice, juicy conversation or would make a really potent goal to pursue.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you are ready to develop your coaching practice over the next academic year, please join us for the next cohort of The Coach. Wherever you are in building a coaching culture in your school, the coach will give you the strategies, skills, and tools that you need to make coaching a success. This academic year-long online course and mentorship program will empower you to confidently apply instructional coaching strategies in any situation, from building a coaching program to having a coaching conversation to being a leader in your school community. Registration for our next global cohort opens on the 21st of February and closes on the 14th of March. We facilitate only one cohort each year so we can offer individualized support for each participant. Now is your chance to be part of a global cohort of passionate and engaged learners, to leverage 40 weeks of in-depth coaching content with practical challenges to build your coaching skills, and to reflect on your practice for the entire academic year with a mentor. Become a certified Eduro Learning instructional coach today. Head over to edurolearning.com/coach to find out more. Here at Eduro, we provide customized online professional learning for educators at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Our mission is to empower the relentless learner in you to embrace your inner leader and make a bigger impact in your school setting. Join our Coach Better Facebook group and connect with us on social media at Eduro Learning for more great resources at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, and we'll see you next time.